Hey, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the San Benito Planning Commission meeting for July 2014. Let's begin by rising and pledging our allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Hey, Michael, is roll call noted? Each month at the Planning Commission, we set aside time to hear from the public for items that will otherwise not be discussed on the agenda. Are there any public comments of that type? If not, public comments closed. Turning next to the consent agenda, which consists of the acknowledgement of public hearing notice, certificate of posting, the minutes of May 14, and a number 4 lot line adjustment 14568 for Lumpa. Is there any questions on the consent agenda? Any need to pull number 4, talk about it further, or is the commission comfortable with passing the consent agenda as a whole?
I'll move.
Of 1 through 4
Right.
on consent? Okay, there's a motion to approve 1 through 4 on consent. Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, turning next to agenda item 5, it's use permit 1097-14, owner Martin W. and Barbara L. Seiler. Applicant is Verizon Wireless.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. Michael Kelly, Associate Planner, and I'm here to talk again about use permit 1094-14, the proposal to put a 115-foot monopine on 9265 Fairview Road for Verizon and related equipment along with the tower. And as I said before, just to point out, or no, right, I'll just turn that off there. You've seen this before, but just to go over again, it's 9265 Fairview Road, halfway between 156 and San Felipe Road. And assessor's parcel map here, where the arrow is shown, is where the tower would be located on the property, right there, Fairview Road. And another view there of the property and its southern neighbors. The monopine design itself, and as you've seen, and you'll see it again in a moment, the branches and the antennas within the branches. And to go over what was discussed in the June 18th meeting, there were a few different issues that were brought up, and those were the difference between the height, difference between the structure itself and the trees and other objects that are in the area, locations of the tower, where else could it go possibly, aerial spraying, and then 2 matters related to the conditions of approval, the indemnification and the 500-foot rule. So as for the matter of the height difference, or really the character of the site, just looking at a few pictures, hope that's bright enough. Can you all see?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Well, the approximate location of the tower here is viewed from the center of the property. This is looking eastward from near the house at the center of the property. And this is a tomato field here. I went out and took some pictures here. At the corner of the field is where the tower site would be, roughly here. And there's orchard on the neighboring property there, and there's their neighboring property to the south of the tower site. And this is at the tower site, where roughly around here it would be fenced in and equipment would be sitting there. And the tower would be sitting there, and here's the property line and the orchard across the property line. This is looking northward. This is looking southward from the corner of the tomato field, and here's the neighboring property, and here is another neighboring property in the tower site approximately. Looking from Fairview Road, from the public right-of-way from just to the southwest, this is looking northeastward, and tower site's about there, and neighboring property, and some of the shrubbery that Fairview Road and 156, as you look toward this site, are pretty much, they have a lot of trees and shrubbery that kind of shield some of the view for drivers that might affect how the site is viewed. You saw at the previous meeting the photo simulations provided by the applicant as viewed from right here, and the closest point to the tower site is Fairview Road and the tower site, and in the middle is this property that has a lot of trees, especially for the area. And looking toward the site, you see all these trees, and the applicant has inserted the tower there. And another view, the tower is inserted there as simulated. And in this view, you can more clearly see the tower there. And so that's provided by the applicant. Now, the neighbor also has concerns about how this will look and has provided a few photo simulations that are based on the height of, for example, the utility pole here, which, as you might barely see, it's 40 feet. This dotted line here is 40 feet off the ground at approximately the tower site. And to use that proportion, here is the 115-foot tall monopine as viewed according to the label on the picture, approximately at the corner of Fairview Road and 156. And here's the view as it's labeled from Luty's Lane, looking northwestward here, I believe. And again, there's a utility pole for scale, 40 feet and 115 feet tall, the tower. And then from Fairview Road, looking northward, probably to just about the east, I think, of the earlier photo simulations provided by the applicant. Again, utility pole right there nearby and 115-foot tall monopine. So that is some description of how the tree relates, the artificial tree relates to the trees and other structures that are already there. No trees are anywhere as tall as that, but there are a lot of tall trees, tall-ish trees, a lot of them 40 to 50 feet, one or two of them about 70 or 75 feet, but this would definitely be the tallest structure in the area. On the matter of alternative locations, the applicant has provided a letter that you've all received and I just passed out, and it points out these different areas on the property. And let me get that letter just a moment. These different areas on, okay, so the subject property is this right here, and here's the tower site. And the letter makes reference to 1, 2, 3, and 4 areas and explains what the reasoning is for locating where that is. And I don't know, I might ask the applicant to describe this in more detail. But basically, 4 down here is the southerly site, and that's right up against the road. These are all sites that would fit within the 500-foot radius rule, where the tower is required to be no less than 500 feet from the houses. And so this would satisfy that apparently, but it would be right up against Fairview Road, and I'm not sure that you're interested in such a facility right up against Fairview Road. And then this area was considered, but it has issues with easements. And then this one is right in the middle of farmland and could require, in addition to the footprint of the tower itself, a road would be needed there, and that could disturb more farmland, according to the applicant. And then over here is, well, it's right next door to the neighboring property, and that, as you saw in the previous meeting, could be an issue. So that's all further described in the letter that I've handed out. Then there's the matter of spraying, which I described in some detail in the staff report. And this is a discussion that I'm not sure that, I don't know about elsewhere, but I haven't heard it discussed much here or in my office, the compatibility between spraying and cell towers like this. And I've heard different things, and I think that it would be helpful to discuss this further here, because I don't have a good answer for how this would be acceptable or not in relation to this application. As I said in the staff report, pilots of aerial spraying aircraft are very skilled, and they can fly according to whatever obstacles are on the ground, and they can survey the site and see where they need to go, but it is possible that some structures do prevent or make spraying very inefficient, requiring a lot of turns and watching out for just the obstructions. So I think that is something that would need to be discussed further. And I think we have people here present who would be willing to discuss that. And then the other two items are the indemnification condition and the 500-foot rule matter, which leads me to talk about those conditions. One of them is related to the aerial spraying. Number 8 is, all these conditions were not in the June 18th staff report. They've all changed. 1 and 9 are, you know what, I should actually, some of you didn't take the paper, and I should have just given it to you anyway. The paper copy, no, actually, no, Barbara handed out these conditions, so you should have those. 1 and 8 are changes from the staff report that you've received, possible changes. If you are interested in approving this application, then 1 and 8 are, 1 is a change to the indemnification language, and I suppose Barbara could explain that a little further. And number 9 is a change to the co-location language, which basically points to the idea that if co-location happens, it needs to be consistent with the pine tree stealth design. And so those two are changes from the staff report, this staff report. 8 and 12 are changes, possible changes from the previous meeting's staff report. 8 responds to the aerial spraying matter as a kind of a compromise by having lighting put atop the tower as in the form of the kind of lighting that you see atop taller towers to make it visible to pilots, including at night. And the spraying does happen at night, like in early morning, to notify pilots that this obstruction is here. And then number 12 is mentioned in the staff analysis, the matter of the deed restriction for the 500-foot radius, noting that the 500-foot rule for keeping the tower away from residences be on the title, and also that residences be kept away on the subject property, be kept away from the tower. But as we discussed in the previous meeting, it is really about the tower's location and not about residences' location, so it might prove to be not necessary. So, as I said in the staff report, the recommendation is that the Commission review the staff report, hold a public hearing, and hear any proponents and opponents of the proposed project. And if you choose to approve this use permit, we'd recommend with the conditions and findings in the staff report, except as I've mentioned here at the podium. If you have any questions, or if it's time for proponents and opponents to speak, I guess this is the time.
Okay, thank you, Michael. Any questions for staff at this time? If not, let's open up public comment. Were all the commissioners here last month? You were gone. So just to refresh everybody's memory, I think it's a fair assessment to say that the commission was basically okay with the cell tower. There was an objection to its location, and we continued it in order to see if it could be slid further west along this property, that property line right here. And the bottom line is that you've had a chance to see whether another location works, and you concluded no, another location does not work. So what's before the commission tonight is to approve it in the originally proposed location. Is that right? Yeah. No, you can just nod from there. That's fine. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah. But in other words, let's not replow all the ground from last month as
Sure.
if it didn't happen. We're familiar with the site, the tower, the use, all of that stuff. Again, the only thing that seemed to be up in the air was whether a different location could be chosen. If you want to tell us the reasons why another one couldn't, that's fine.
I'm Rebecca Anderson, representing Verizon Wireless. And yes, just as the commission requested, we did research all of the other possible locations, and we did conclude that the previously proposed location is the best workable for the multitude of reasons as listed in my letter. But what I did want to emphasize, or actually bring up newly, is just after a little bit further thought and discussion with the property owners, we are able to move the site approximately 45 feet west. And so if that will satisfy anyone, then we would be happy to move the site in that 45 feet to the west. But other than that, I want to just be here in case you have any questions about the alternatives and/or about our proposal. And we just do ask for your approval tonight.
Okay, thank you very much. Anyone else from the public care to speak on this? Okay.
My name's John Tobias. Thank you for this opportunity to speak, and I would like to thank Mr. Kelly for including the photo representations that we submitted in in his PowerPoint this evening. The one thing that came up this evening that's kind of an interesting turn is that you're putting a deed restriction on this property, on the applicant's property of 500 feet away from the tower. Well, if this tower is located directly adjacent to my property and two other adjoining property owners, doesn't this also create a deed restriction on my property also? Because 500 feet one way goes 500 feet the other way. Obviously, there's a radius that goes around the tower, so I don't think this creates just a deed restriction on the applicant's property. When you locate it that close to a property line, there are three other property owners adjacent to this corner, and they're going to be impacted and affected by that also. The one thing I guess I would ask the commission to think about is this height. I asked Mr. Kelly about, is there, height restriction, and I submitted the code and he said, well, there's 35 feet or what is allowable. Well, at this point, what is allowable? This is 115 feet. What was the previous one? I kind of asked for a comparison on what heights are out there, what's being proposed. Is the next height that comes in, is it 150 feet? So at this point, you're creating policy, you're creating precedent to move forward with, and you might want to consider the fact that you're doing that and give that some thought. In the code, in my comments, the code says that they are to submit photorealistic representations from Verizon. I don't think they've done that. I don't think they've met the level that they need to for a project of this magnitude. And that's why I submitted those photos that I had done. In their artist rendering or their rendering, they show a blip on a skyline. On mine, I went to Fairview Road. I shot east. I went to the approximate corner of Highway 156 and Fairview Road, and I shot over the top of a two-story house. And the reason I always included the power pole with a transformer on it is that you could recognize exactly where the location of this tower is going to be. And the other one I shot was the end of where there's a small subdivision at the end of Ludy's Lane. And you can see where it is by far the only thing out there that is even close to that height. And Mr. Kelly had stated that there are some trees 50 feet high, maybe 60 feet high. Well, this tower towers over those trees by more than twice. So to say that this is a stealth tower, I think is a misnomer. I just don't think it is a stealth tower. And now we're talking about putting lights on the top of it. So now we're going to have a lit Christmas tree out there in a farming area, in a rural area, that you're going to be able to see. And at that point, stealth becomes lit. So you're going to see it from Fairview Road. You're going to see the lights on it from Fairview Road. It makes it even more recognizable. So according to the county code, this thing is supposed to be blend in and be compatible with what's in the area. And it seems like the farther we go, the more uncompatible and the less it blends into the area. So I guess those are the main things I wanted to bring up tonight. And I will bring up the last and final thing on this aerial spraying. Whether I use it once a week, once a month, once a year, or once in the next 25 years, that's a right my property has, and I would like to retain that right. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I have a question for the speaker, Mr. Tobias. Yes. Most people don't pay any attention to this, but do you remember what the millimeter of your lens was when you were taking your pictures?
No, I'm sorry, I don't.
Was it a long lens or was it a shorter lens,
It's a shorter lens, yeah.
like about a 50 millimeter or 55?
I'm not sure, to be honest with you. But that's why I concluded the power pole in there. I talked to PG&E, and PG&E said that the height of the power pole with the transformer is approximately 40 feet. So, 40 feet times 3 is right around 120.
Yeah.
So that's, I'm not saying this is an exact representation, but if it's not, well, then isn't it up to Verizon, the applicant, to provide a more representative view of what this thing should look like? We keep hearing that this thing is going to be screened off of Fairview Road. Well, I don't think it is. And I included a picture right off Fairview Road. You can see the power pole on my property, and just up from that power pole is the location site.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
You have another card, Michael?
Yeah, Martin Seiler.
My name is Martin Seiler. My wife and I own that property where the proposed tower is going to be. There's just a couple things I'd like to address, and this aerial spraying seems to be a big deal for some reason or other. And I know Mr. Tobias and myself and Mr. Kelly have all talked to the local helicopter operator, which all of the spraying is done by helicopter in that part of the county. The plots are only 40 acres, and the helicopters are far more precise to do that with. And when I talk to the operator, yes, of course, the tower is, or any obstacle is, you got to be cautious, obviously. But it does not prevent, will not prevent, any aerial spraying from going on with a helicopter. The only thing that would prevent it, according to the local operator, is apple orchard, which Mr. Tobias has. He refuses to do apple orchards. He'll do row crops, and in fact, the tower, if it were a factor, it would affect myself far more than himself because of that. Obviously, a guy's got to be careful and know what he's doing, but it does not prevent aerial spraying at any time. The other thing that kind of sticks in my craw a little bit is in the Verizon letter there, when Mr. Tobias was initially considered for this site, he had no qualms about it. He had no complaints about where the tower would, or the height of it, and now suddenly it's moved somewhere else, and it goes on and on and on. And in fact, when we talked to the Verizon rep and my wife and myself, he said, and those people were all there, that if Verizon compensates him like they intend to compensate me, they can put the tower anywhere they like. That got under my skin a little bit. And I understand some of his other complaints and objections, but that I don't think is a fair deal. And I think you guys, or the commission would find find it very difficult to find a more discreet or unobtrusive place to put this tower, particularly out in that area, which I guess has to be in that particular area out there. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Mr. Tobias, we'll give you just a minute to respond.
Okay, I'd just like to respond
Yeah,
to
but
the-
let me just say this, though. Typically, we don't do comment, rebuttal, comment, rebuttal.
Well, he
but-
brought up a new interested party situation, and
Even
sure, I was
still, we don't do
contacted
it.
by Verizon, and I was interested, but I never had a discussion with Ms. Anderson about a 120 or 115-foot tower, and I never went anywhere with it, and if she had told me that, I would have told her I'm not interested in that, because that's, to me, it's obtrusive, it does not fit in with the area, and therefore, and I understand the need for cell towers and locating them, but at this point, when you locate it right next to 3 other parcels, you're impacting other people to the same degree that you're impacting the applicants are impacting themselves. I just don't think that's right. And, you know, whether aerial spraying is sure, you can get around a tower, but there is always a concern and there's always a lessening of the impact of what they're doing. And as far as apples, if I want to put on a sunblock or something like that, I'm sure that CNN helicopter would be more than happy to do that.
Okay, any other speaker cards, Michael? No. All right. Any other public comments? If not, public comment is closed. Byron, we clarified this last time, but perhaps it needs to be clarified again. The county code with the 500-foot rule stands for the proposition that a wireless company cannot locate a tower within 500 feet of an existing house.
Yes.
But if someone wanted to build a house within 500 feet of the tower willingly, they could do that.
It would not apply unless there's a deed restriction on that property.
Right.
But the deed restriction does not travel from property to property.
And nothing as regards, speaking of deed restrictions, nothing regarding this application pertains to deed restrictions.
No.
A deed restriction is not a condition.
Not
of
in
approval.
not in any adjacent property, simply the property in question.
Okay.
Don't we have
You don't need to put a deed restriction on the property. It was just for the planning commission's approval. It's not required by our county code. It does not need to be added as, it was just if the planning commission thought that that was an appropriate condition of approval. It's just for the planning commission's consideration, but it's not required. So a house, if you didn't have the deed restriction though, and if somebody wants to build a house 300 feet away from the tower on that property, they could do that.
Yeah, that's condition 12, which is in your staff report, if you wish to put that deed restriction on the property.
My condition 12 says reserved.
Yeah, in the body of the staff report on page 3, it discusses what that condition 12 would be should the commission wish to apply it, which,
Yeah.
Oh,
I removed the condition on the thought that it might be appropriate not to keep it, but if you want to replace it, it's there in the staff
it's not
analysis if
required,
you
it's
like.
for your consideration.
well, I don't know how the rest of the commission feels, but I don't see the need for a deed restriction. If someone wants to build a house within 10 feet of the tower, I could care less.
Yeah, I agree. I'm
Okay.
Deed restriction lasts forever.
Right,
I'm not sure that the cell tower is going to be there forever.
right.
If technology ever gets to the point where we don't need towers, then that's going to go away.
Good point. Good point. Okay, and then one other question I had, and then I'm done with my questions, and I'm sure the other commissioners might have others. Michael, there's no evidence before this planning commission that a cellular tower as that which is proposed will hinder or otherwise prevent aerial spraying, correct?
Well, that's what I'm saying, that actually I don't have an answer for that at this.
No, my questions are very simple. We don't have anything in front of us in terms of a letter, public comment, or anything that a cell tower will prevent or hinder aerial spraying. We do have a letter saying, no, it won't.
Mhm.
That's been provided. And we have testimony tonight saying that they've checked and there's nothing, but I don't see anything saying that a cell tower will affect aerial spraying.
What you have is the fact sheet from the National Agricultural Aviation Association, which on the dangerous effect low-level obstacles pose to the aerial application industry. That was included at the back of your staff report. It's not something you had at the last meeting.
Yeah, that's attached to the staff report. Now, it talks about risks of having this sort of thing in prime farmland and prime farmland type settings, and makes recommendations for how to approach these sorts of installations.
But the fact sheet, though, pertains to all low-level obstacles, which it could include power poles,
Could include,
cell
yes.
towers, anything like that. So it's just generic as regards. Okay. All right. Those are all the questions I have. What about the rest of the commission? Commissioner Lowe?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On the lighting, how does that affect our dark skies ordinance?
I think the dark skies ordinance exempts, if that sounds right, I think it exempts safety lighting. I don't have the ordinance handy, but
We can look that up. I think he's correct.
Michael, is the lighting intended to be lighting up the tower, or is it like a beacon on the top?
on top.
It's
On
just
top.
like a flashing
Yeah,
red
just a
light?
flashing beacon, like you see other towers, you see radio antennas that have a flasher.
That's the way I understood
thing.
it to say, but
Yeah.
it's not the way
Yeah.
it sounded like some people did.
I guess, I want on the record that I did speak with Mr. Tobias, and there was nothing that came up tonight that we did not, there was nothing in our conversation that was different than what he brought up tonight. I would also like on the record that I'm disappointed in the visual pictures that we got from Verizon. I don't feel that they're adequate for what we were looking at. And I guess that last week I said that I thought on a 100-acre parcel that that tower could be moved. And I guess I should have been stronger with what I said, because I will not approve this project the way it sits today.
No, no comments.
Commissioner Keller, any further questions or comments?
I'm playing catch-up here, but was there any discussion about the need for it to be as tall as it is?
No.
Is there any option of making it shorter or fit the geography better? Or
Right, no, that did not come up, but you could certainly, I'd be interested in that.
maybe
Did you hear the question? The question was whether there's any opportunity to make the tower not as tall, shorter. And yeah, you can come back up, definitely.
What about essential?
Regarding the height of the tower, actually haven't discussed that with the Verizon RF engineers, since that wasn't something that had been brought up before. Regarding the photo simulations, I was unaware that there were going to be alternate simulations, so I was caught off guard as far as being able to prepare something for that. Our photo simulation preparers create hundreds of these per year all throughout California for many jurisdictions. They're an architect and engineering firm. So I do not make them myself. All I could do is trust in their level of expertise. And I would have
Wireless communication.
liked to have done more in that regard if I had known that there was going to be that type of issue. But regarding the height, there is, I guess, obviously a discrepancy between what we believe it's going to look like. It is my opinion, based on, I do dozens of these throughout the state every year, and I see them all the time. I work with them a lot. I do believe it will be compatible in this area and that it will not stick out. And that's based on my experience with working with many towers. And if reducing the height a little bit, 10 feet, would convince you to approve it today, I'm pretty sure Verizon could go for that, but I would have to check. But as far as like a dramatic reduction, I don't think that would be workable for this area. And we are trying to cover a pretty large area of land. And we really do hope that you approve the application. But if there are further questions or discussions, we'd love to continue to help work those out.
Thank you. Let's go Commissioner Pierce, or Jeff, did you, sorry, Commissioner
just
Keller
kind
to
of
follow
follow
up.
up to what she was saying. You know, I'm not in the business myself, but what I've noticed a lot of times when they put these stealth towers, they'll put them within a group of trees or next to a big water tower, something else that's tall. They'll put it on the hillside and make it look like a windmill, and they get a little elevation with the hill, and then, you know, a 40-foot tower on top of that. So it seems like, to me, putting a 100-foot tower in the middle of a flat piece of property with really nothing around it, it does stick up and it is obtrusive. So it seems like if there were an opportunity to make it less so, then it should be explored.
It is really far back from the road, thousands of feet, and there really are quite a bit of other trees around, including the mountain backdrop. Especially on this side of the road, north of Fairview. I also looked south of Fairview, also east of the highway. Those areas do not have trees. It's completely open. And I felt choosing this property on the north side of the Fairview and going way back into the property, that was the best option in the whole area, because there really are a lot of other items, objects, trees, whereas on the other sides there aren't.
Okay. Commissioner Pierce?
Yeah, I've got to ask you the same question. Do you know what lens they used in order to take their pictures?
No.
Could you check that out when, it looks like you're going to be bringing this back. So if you could check that out, and the reason I asked this, and for my other commissioners, in another life I was a professional photographer. 50 millimeters is the typical level that the eye would see through. Once you start taking telephoto lenses, and depending on your angle, it compresses and it exaggerates. So you could make, if you took yours with less than a 50, which kind of looks wide angle, it could reduce that. Same thing adversely, if he took his with a telephoto, it could amplify that. So what I'd like to see is apples and apples in what we're talking about as far as what it would really look like from everyone's camera and with the commissioners, if we were standing out there, what it would look like. And I appreciate the telephone pole put in there as a sort of the baseline for the 40-foot level.
I'm sure I can get a much more information from our architect engineering firm, including statements, all the details, and including maybe more photos as well, if that's important to the commission.
Thank you. And then my other question is to Pat. Okay, if you can't approve it as is, what is your expectation?
Truthfully, I'd like it moved, John. I'm sorry, Ray. I think we all agreed last week that a different site would be better.
Yeah. So how far away, how far back? Give us some guidelines. And give them some guidelines so we can kind of get an idea of what we're talking about here, so we don't keep bringing them back month after month after month.
Right, well, I think just off the property line. I think far enough back that it's not directly on the property line. I feel that it's affecting 3 other properties, and I think you can do better than that.
How far? I did walk away from last meeting with the thought that it was just to be researched, and I felt like we had done that. And if there is further direction, I would love to hear it.
It was my understanding last meeting that you guys were all going to go in and sit down in a room and be warm and friendly and agree to a mutual settlement between the two of you.
I was hoping
Now,
that too. We did meet.
Well, that
We
was
did
my
meet,
takeaway,
and,
okay? And I
I was
thought that
hoping
you
that would've
guys were both
happened.
going to agree and come back. So maybe that's what Pat's talking about, too.
That's exactly what I'm talking about.
Okay. So now you have your direction.
Well, let's, before we start giving directions, let's get the Commissioner Rodriguez, do you want to?
I just had a question that, how far is it from the property, other property lines? There's no dimensions on this.
Yeah, I think at first it was proposed showing 17 feet, but after talking to Michael, we're going to, it's 32. But then I just mentioned earlier, we would like to move it over, so, well, at least 45 feet, so that it would be more than 50 feet.
32 plus, sorry to interrupt, but 32 plus an additional 45 or 45 from the property line? See what I'm saying?
Yes, I have to, so, okay, 17 is what it was, and then there's a 40-foot compound, and then we can move that 45 feet. So 17 plus 45.
62. 62 feet.
I got 62 feet. Okay, from the property
So
line.
would that be, if we moved it so that it was that far, would that be approvable, acceptable?
In my opinion, I think it'd be at least 500 feet from the property lines. Figure a spot.
Are any of the locations shown on the map something that you would recommend?
500 feet from at the corner of the property, from the neighboring properties over. You about have to go, what's that, north, east, and,
So you'd recommend in the middle of the property?
well, if it's, I mean, it's going to satisfy everybody.
What about at the south, at the edge of Fairview Road? There's no one's homes near there. That would be acceptable to the neighbor and the property owner.
And how far away from the properties there?
Oh.
500 feet from the property line of the neighbors,
Of any neighbor?
yes.
I guess I'm just curious because that's not anything that's part of your code as far as placement of wireless facilities.
But we're
So
trying,
is this
we're trying to keep peace here.
arbitrary number?
It's an arbitrary number to keep peace here.
I don't know that the planning commission is telling you exactly where to put it. I think what they're saying is they're not comfortable with the current location and that you might want to consider the location and bring back a proposal that's satisfactory to the applicant. Is that what I hear the planning commission saying?
But what I hear the applicant saying is that she's looked for other locations already. So, I mean, we can kick the can down the road, but query whether we're going to be right back in the same spot in August.
Is there any other feedback I can get regarding the current location? Was there anyone that was interested in approving it? Or does anyone else want to comment on that?
Well, yeah, for whatever it may be or may not be worth, I was prepared to vote in favor.
Mr. Chair, maybe we should make a motion and just go with it.
Go with the what?
Make a motion. I mean, if she wants a vote, we can give her a vote.
Well, you know, if it's.
Well, I don't
is
want a
there any-
denial vote.
Yeah, I think
So
that's, I was
I'm
just going to
just
say that. I don't
looking
think
for
she wants a
some
denial because
feedback.
then it's an appeal as opposed to a continuance, right, Pat?
That's correct. But I think asking a straw poll of the planning commission isn't.
Oh, yeah, I didn't call for a straw poll. But you all said why you're against it, and I can say, well, I didn't have an issue with the location, so for whatever that may be worth. So I guess the question then is a motion.
Well, Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Before you do that, and if you take this away, if you try to bring this down close to Fairview, so it is going to be a blatant visual effect, then you won't get my vote,
Thank you for your feedback.
okay?
I am interested in hearing your thoughts on the other locations. Thank you.
So I'm just thinking out loud, but, you know, as far as distance from property line, it seems like whatever if the distance from the property line equaled the height, then it would not affect the other property owner. So if it was 60 feet tall and 60 feet away, then if it fell over, it wouldn't land on their property. If it was 100
Someone
feet,
chopped it down.
yeah. George Washington was out. Or if it was 115 feet tall and 115 feet away, seems like that would minimize any effect to the neighbor. I don't know how to, I'm just throwing that out there.
Okay.
Would it be helpful if we got some specific evidence from calling like an aviation person to say how much distance they need to have to turn the plane if they're doing aerial spraying?
Well, that's why I was asking about evidence in the record, so to speak, for tonight. And the only evidence that I saw in the record on the issue, particular to this cell tower, was a letter submitted by the applicant. There was nothing submitted by any opponents.
Yeah,
And
the
that- and
staff
letter
did
from-
consult with local sprayers, is that correct? That just to,
I might mention, I did speak with a local pilot whom I invited to the meeting tonight, but who hasn't shown up. Let me see.
or not have any obstacles.
That, I don't have the exact numbers that he gave, but it was one opinion, and I'm not sure about whether the one opinion was, well, actually, I'll say that the number 500 feet did come up for a distance of the tower from not just property line, but a field to be sprayed, that that distance would be the kind of a distance that would be needed to effectively spray a field. I don't know. That was the one opinion, though.
Oh, that's frustrating. See, that's important, and that's why I said that last meeting, that if we could get something from, if the issue's aerial spraying, and if the claim is by a farmer, if you planning commission approve this tower, I can't spray my field, then let's hear from someone who sprays fields and says that's true or not true. The only thing we do have on that point right now is something provided by Verizon, who said, no, I've looked at this and this won't affect the ability to spray the field. So in the absence of anything opposing that, it seems like that goes undisputed. Now you're saying, no, I talked with someone, he can't be here tonight, but he told me it's got to be the tower has to be 500 feet away. If that's true, that's important.
And is that an airplane or is it a helicopter? Because that's really important.
I think that was the difference. It was, he said it was a quarter mile, actually, for an airplane, and 500 feet for a helicopter. But as I say, that's one opinion.
I think that an aerial applicator would prefer that everything be completely clear and that there be no obstacles. And it depends on the skill of the pilot and how comfortable they are with whether they will approach a field and depending on what kind of aircraft they're in. And I think it's a case-by-case basis and depends on the crop that's being grown there as well. So I think it's going to be difficult to get a number that anyone's going to say, this is the number that is going to make it so we can spray this field.
And even simple low trees were acknowledged as an obstacle.
And I don't think we need to get to a number either, Byron. I just would like to hear from someone who flies an helicopter and sprays fields and say, hey, we're thinking about putting a tower on this field. What will it do to your ability to spray it? And if you get a sprayer helicopter guy who says it'll make no difference, then that's important to us. If instead he says, yeah, it'll have an effect, it'd be better if it was further away, then that makes a difference. But in the absence of any kind of information like that, what do? We already have the aesthetic
have to
issue.
find someone to volunteer to come and provide that information to.
No, we can get a letter.
Yeah, all I got was verbal, so,
She did get a letter. She got a letter.
Called around,
yeah.
got one.
But from the person I contacted, it was verbal, and I gave an invitation, but that's all I have.
Okay, well, we need to, speaking of bringing things into a landing, we need to bring this one in for a landing. So what is the wish of the commission? You've heard from Verizon, they don't want a denial tonight. They'd like another at-bat. I don't think, is there anyone that would disagree with giving him another chance to find a location? Commissioner Lowe?
I move we continue.
Okay. There's a motion to continue this, frustrations notwithstanding. And maybe you can get additional information between now and next time from staff, from whomever, and so that it won't just be the same thing next time and we're just kicking the can down the road. Because I don't want to waste your time or ours.
Can I ask one more question?
Sure.
So I have one more question I just thought of as far as moving the site. If we moved it directly west so that it's 500 feet from the eastern property line, that does bring us within the realm of a house that's on the same property. Is there any way this commission would be willing to grant a variance or an exception for having the tower closer to that house that's on the same property?
Why don't we do this? Why don't you explore that opportunity with staff? Rather than us shooting from the hip on that question right now, because it would depend on who's in the house. Is the owner willing to go along with that? A lot of things, but maybe that's an opportunity you could explore.
Okay, thank you.
Well, wait, hold on. So we have a motion. Is there to
We
continue
have a
this to
motion to
August?
continue to August 20th at 6 p.m.
Is there a second? Or Commissioner
Second.
Lowe, did you want to add to the motion?
I was just going to, I'll second it, and under the question, I would like some pictures taken, though, like Commissioner Pierce said. I thought that was very good information.
Okay. So for next time, can you make a note to do some more photo representations?
And have the size of the lens.
Yes, noted. And I would appreciate it if you would do your homework and bring that lens size that you use back too. Thank you.
Okay.
And we had a motion in a second.
We have a motion. Commissioner
for the
Lowe
question.
seconded it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
What usually we do cell towers pretty, this one, 3 meetings. Okay. Next agenda item is 6.
Mr. Chair, I
Yes.
just have a comment.
Commissioner Pierce?
We're up here doing specific, and coming up with arbitrary numbers is really what we do. And this cell tower was on a property out on top of the hill, 40 miles away from town. It might be right on the property line, or it may not. And that's what we're here for, is to get the best decision overall so everyone can walk away as happy as possible, just so you know.
Okay, agenda item 6, it's a minor subdivision. And the planner is Mr. Kelly again. It's a request to remove condition 33,
Yes.
payment of inclusionary housing fees.
So, minor subdivision 121307A, amendment to project of the same name minus the letter A, to delete condition 33, which was on the affordable, inclusionary housing matter, which was under the ordinance at the time, the inclusionary housing ordinance at the time that required that subdivisions contribute to affordable housing needs in the county. This ordinance is, of course, no longer, as of 2010, no longer in effect, and some developments were approved that were still under that condition and perhaps continue to be under that condition if the applicants want to address it. They're still under that condition with that fee required. And so the applicant requests that condition be removed in order to continue as a matter of cost to the applicant. So staff recommends that, along with the findings and conditions in the staff report, which conditions to basically keep everything that was conditioned in the earlier approval, except for the inclusionary housing fee. Staff recommends approval, subject to all those conditions as stated in the staff report.
Mike, I do have a question about this.
Yes.
You've got a four-unit subdivision here that looks like you have enough for at least 2 or 3 more splits on sections 1 and 2. Do we have a minor subdivision that we're going to approve and then come back and approve another minor subdivision later?
Wait, when you say look like there are,
Yeah, go to the end of your cul-de-sac and you've got 4 5-acre lots down there, but it looks
Right.
like you have enough reserve area to get at least 3 more lots out of it. Are those exempt? Because I was out there looking at it, it looks like there's not so much slope that they could be built on as well. Should we be looking at, I guess the question is, should we be looking at a major subdivision of 5 or 6 lots here?
if we're talking about the project area related to this project,
Yeah.
it is those 4 lots that would each be down to the minimum lot size.
Yeah,
But if we're
I'm-
talking about the property to the west, that was treated as a separate project, I believe, precisely because the owner was a different.
So we have
Party.
separate owners at the beginning of the roadway and different owners at the back of the cul-de-sac?
Yes.
So I had a question, Mike. So you're recommending that the condition for inclusionary housing be removed?
Yes.
Let me ask the obvious question. Couldn't everyone who was approved during 2004, 2010 then come in and say, hey, we want that removed also? What kind of fiscal impact would that have to the county?
Well,
Mr.
it's
Chair,
been addressed
I
by
think
the,
everyone already has. I think this is probably one of the last ones we're going to see.
Everyone has already had that removed?
Yeah, all the ones that have not been constructed, when they come in and have their compliance meeting, when we go through the conditions of approval to check off to make sure they've met all the conditions prior to recording the map, if they've paid it, they've got their map, and then they've moved on. If they haven't gone through that process yet, they've been coming back, and typically we've been doing this administratively, but in this case, we're taking it to the commission, but there are very few left out
So
there.
normally you guys just delete it on your own, but now how come you're asking us to delete this one when you guys normally do
I
it?
think it has to do with timeframes, and because with the planning commission doing it, it extends the time allowed between now and the recordation of the map.
Okay.
and in addition,
Wait, hold on just one second.
Sure,
So what
sure.
you're saying is that as a matter of course, you've been deleting these?
We've been administratively deleting
Well, that's
this
important.
condition when they fall within that window.
That's right. That's important. Because if it was the other way around and you hadn't deleted it for anybody, then what makes this applicant so
Right.
special?
Right.
But, okay, that's helpful to know.
And I think there was one other occasion that I can't recall that the planning commission might have deleted it in a different case, too.
Really?
It was the LECO map,
Which one?
the LECO.
You did? I don't remember that.
Deleted, and then that one it was among other amendments as well, but that was one of
Oh,
the
maybe
amendments.
that's why it didn't stand out. Okay. Okay, I think we got the picture. Anything else?
and in addition to that, I believe the housing element points to the rationale for doing this, because when the housing element was considered, the inclusionary housing ordinance was considered a constraint on the supply of housing itself. So that was part of the rationale of removing the inclusionary housing ordinance, and that could
Yeah,
also
no, we know the reasons
serve
why it
as the
was-
rationale for this, too.
We know the reasons why the law was taken off the books. The only question now is one of fairness, and if other people have had to pay it, or might be forced to pay it. But if, on the other hand, the county's deleting them as a matter of course, then I think it makes it pretty easy. Thank you, Michael. Anyone from the public want to speak on this? I don't think there's a whole lot to be said, but you're welcome to, sir. Yes? Okay.
My name is Naresh Kamboch. I'm from Southern California. Actually, it is property of my family, me and my brother, my nephew and my daughter also. Since they don't have any money to consider, I'm a civil engineer by professions. For the last 40 years, I'm doing the profession. So I volunteered myself so that they can save something. So I'm working. I've got all these plans approved from the county. Now we have also developed all the development also. All the road has been built, storm drain has been built, a road has been also widened. At this same time, some of the the cost we never knew that we had to incur, like moving the poles, which we had to incur about $40,000, another $20,000. So it is a very difficult position for us. And the people they bought all the, you can say, mortgage from the houses. It's a really, really tough position because I'm being the engineer. They asked me to work for them, whatever has to be done. All the plans and even for the construction site, I have to be there. I'm away from my home, 300 miles from there, so I have to come every maybe 2 weeks or 3 weeks, like for last 1 year. So it is a very, very hard situation, which we are requesting the commission to waive this fees because we can't continue like that. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you, sir. Any other members of the public? If not, public comments closed. Any questions of the commission? Anyone, staff? For a commissioner considering a motion, I think we should pay attention to the specific wording of the staff recommendation, which requests that findings be made under CEQA and other findings. That should probably be included in the motion, correct, County Council?
Yes, you could either do it per the staff recommendation or take the wording from page 2.
In the box?
Yes.
Okay.
Or in the AIT,
Or what?
or on the front page. Looks
Yeah.
like they're both the same.
Yeah, the summary sheet. Okay, if there are no more questions or comments, is there a proposed motion?
Mr. Chair, I move that let's see. I'm having trouble with that one. I move that we approve the matter before us, that we make the following CEQA findings. Recognize the approval of this amendment has been considered and reviewed under CEQA by the initial study mitigated negative deck that was prepared for minor subdivision 1213-07 and adopted by the Planning Commission on February 4th, 2009. That we adopt this recommendation under the subdivision findings made by the Planning Commission on February 4th, 2009 in recognition of this amendment's consistency with said findings, and approve this amendment to the minor subdivision 1213-07 or 1213-07A with all the conditions of approval.
As set forth, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, is there a second to the motion?
Second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye?
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
No.
No?
No.
But you didn't want to say why no?
What's that?
Okay.
Based on, it was approved back in 2009. You should go back to that time that it was approved,
Okay,
so.
okay.
I believe it passes 3-2 then.
Right, sorry. That's right.
Do
3-2.
we need to identify vote?
And
With,
that,
just for the record, Commissioners Rodriguez and Lowe opposed.
correct. That's the last agenda item for this evening, unless there are any other planning commissioner comments. If there are none, is there a motion? Yes. Yeah, what about that? That's a good
Yeah, we
commissioner.
weren't able to organize that for this meeting. It's too bad, because this would have been a good one to have, but the schedules weren't able to line up. So we're working on it, and hopefully we can get that arranged sometime in the next couple months.
Since that statement was made, I think it's a little out of order, but anyway, I was hoping maybe there would be some planning commissioners from the city here, and I wanted 3 minutes just to make a statement, so I don't know, I guess it's not appropriate, but,
What so why don't you come up here so it's at least on video?
stick it under public comment, maybe, I don't know.
Yeah.
Stick it under, I don't know. It's very brief.
Okay. Well, no. That's not what I'm not suggesting you make all that, say all that stuff right now. I'm just saying that instead of yelling from back there so it can be on video, why don't you stand here for a second? And then I'll ask you a question. But you have to use the microphone. So you're saying that and what's your name, sir?
Steve Rosati.
So, Steve, you're saying that you have comments prepared for the joint meeting that's coming
Well,
up?
yeah, I thought there was going to be a brief discussion here with some city planners, and so,
And that's what I meant to tell you. We are going to have that meeting with the
Okay.
city. It's just, do you have the date?
I don't have a date yet, no.
So soon, though.
Yeah, we're efforting that, yeah.
So do you want to keep your comments handy until we have that meeting?
well, I'd like just to make a couple now, just for you to think about, if I can. I don't know if it's out of order, really out of order. I mean, it's just a few statements made about the county's general plan roughly, and traffic, and that's about it. You know, I mean, 2 minutes maybe.
Well, yeah, and you heard me at the beginning. I said we set aside time at the beginning of the meeting for items not on the agenda
Right.
during public comment.
Okay, well, that's fine.
Yeah, let's just do that.
Okay.
But I would absolutely encourage you to come back to that joint meeting with the Hollister City folks here, because I think that they would benefit from hearing your comments.
Well, and
So,
I'm hoping that when that happens, that you give adequate time for the public.
for sure. How is that
I
going to
don't
be
know.
how's that going to be publicized, Byron, when we have the joint meeting? How will folks know about that?
We will, it'll be noticed the same way a normal meeting is noticed, but we'll have, probably try to make some sort of extra effort to make sure that everybody knows, because it will be a city meeting as well.
Right.
So they'll have their noticing requirements, we'll have our noticing requirements, and we'll try to make sure everyone knows that it's coming or not coming.
Sure. Maybe like Benito link or something, we
Yeah,
can post
that'd
it.
be
Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
excuse me, will we run it more informally, like a workshop, or?
Scoping, like a scoping.
No, it was at the request of the city. So I would actually ask them how they envisioned, we were thinking about possibly doing it tonight because this was a time that it was identified at one time that might work for everybody. Since we weren't able to do it, we'll go back to them and say, well, when can you guys do it? And then I'll try to do an informal, find out what your schedule is
Okay.
between now and then.
And Steve, you can certainly call me, and I'll let you
Okay.
know if I've heard of the date or anything.
Yeah, that's fine. And in the meantime, just put your thinking caps on that, your planning commissioners, your planners, somebody has got to be following the general plan of this community. So anyway, I won't go any further than that. And I know that sounds absurd, but anyway, I've got some stuff in here that's just made me sick when I heard it at the board meeting. And anyway,
It sounds like great stuff for that joint meeting, so let's,
to give a little ample time, sometimes 3 minutes,
I know.
like said, a lot of us figure 3 minutes, people that give a rip, 3 minutes is like, going, how frustrating, go to Sacramento for 3 minutes.
Yeah.
You feel like,
Right.
staying home, don't you?
right.
So I'm just saying, at public workshops, if you really want to get some meat,
We'll give,
you know what I'm saying.
you bet. We'll give you the time you need, don't worry.
Hey, Steve, Steve, aren't you on noticing for the agendas for city and county? Aren't you on
Are you
the
on the
notice list? Don't they send you an email? Okay, well, okay, let's get you on the list then. Okay.
Okay, any other planning commissioner comments? Is there a motion to adjourn?
I would just,
Oh, yes, Commissioner Rodriguez.
how's the general plan coming?
General plan update.
Hang on, so let's let everyone hear it. There was some significant discussion about the impacts of Highway 25 on the general plan, and it was discussed at length at the board and determined that that Highway 25, it's important to the general plan that Highway 25 be included back into the traffic impact fee. And that way, the general plan reflects that mitigation for future development is handled partly by the fact that Highway 25 is planned to be improved at some point. When the county removed it from the traffic impact fee list, it then caused it to be removed from the state's list as far as future improvements. That impacts the general plan, which means that any development in this county creates a impact to Highway 25 that it's not mitigated. So it was determined at that meeting that the traffic impact fee should be revised, that the nexus study should take place, impact fee should be revised, Highway 25 be included in the traffic impact fee, and the general plan then reflecting that Highway 25 is on the list of planned improved highways.
Can I ask why it was removed?
To try to spur additional development in the county, to reduce the traffic impact fee. It was removed to reduce the traffic impact fees. So traffic impact fees went from around $24,000 per home to around $5,000 today. That was accomplished by removing Highway 25 from the list.
So you're saying it had something to do with money?
Big surprise.
Where are we at 30,000 feet with the general plan process? We are now July 2014. What do the next 90 days hold in store for us, for example?
We may see, I don't have the schedule in front of me, I should prepare for that, but we may see, the staff is expecting to see a draft DIR somewhat, probably within the next 90 days or so.
Okay.
And then we'll be reviewing that before it hits the street.
Okay.
So then public review of the EIR would take about 45 days?
45-day review.
Okay, and then we're still in line
We're
for
still on
December?
target, yes.
Okay, so we're still on target for December.
Good. Are you pleased with the process so far?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
They're,
Well,
the consultant has been working around the clock on it.
I'll bet. Okay.
Mr. Chair, can we open public comment on this item?
No, I suggest that we really agendize it for the next meeting. Oh,
Yeah.
you're just being facetious.
Just
Fortunately
trying to allow an accommodation here.
You know, I was just taking that more like under
This is more of a
department.
comment session, though. I was pushing it a little.
Yeah, this is at the end, Steve, at the end of every agenda, we just have a moment since, without violating the Brown Act, where we can check in with staff on something, but it's not intended to open up public comment or have a, because otherwise you can imagine other people think that's not fair. You had a little chat about the general plan and why wasn't that noticed? And I didn't have an opportunity to be there. So I understand that you've got a lot of really good information to share with us, and we look forward to getting it at that joint meeting, which we'll let you know about.
What happens before your general plan is finalized?
I have a feeling it will.
I think you'll show up for the EIR, don't you? That's what the scoping for the EIR is all about. Don't worry about it. You got plenty of say coming.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
Yes.
Second?
Second?
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.